This is a grafted Scion. It is a combination of two different trees fused together. It has nothing to do with the video game called Elden Ring. It has recently come to my attention that there's a popular video game called Elden Ring. And one of the bosses, one of the villains you have to fight in that video game is called the Grafted Scion. And I guess he's a pretty popular character because when people Google him, they find my videos about grafting avocado trees. My videos have nothing to do with gaming, nothing to do with Elden Ring, but for some reason the Elden Ring players enjoy my videos. And they are some of the most curious, nicest commenters I've ever met on YouTube. So I thought I'd come out and share with you the real life inspiration behind your character called the Grafted Scion. And I've been reading about the Grafted Scion, and I can understand why they call him that, because the Grafted Scion is a villain or a final boss that is actually an amalgamation of different creatures all fused together, just the way that we fuse two different trees together to graft our scions. Let me show you how we do that in the agricultural business. We created this graft by clipping the seedling and cutting a slit into the little stem, and then we inserted this clipping from another tree into that slit and tightened it up, secured it with this grafting tape. Now let me remove the grafting tape and I'll show you what the graft looks like. Now without the tape you can see what I was talking about. You can see here the seedling and where it splits like this, where we cut the slit, and then you could see the wedge of this cutting that we inserted down into that slit. So the first thing we got to do is go out and get ourselves a clipping or a cutting from a mature avocado tree. When you grow an avocado tree from seed, you don't know what you're going to get. It's just like when a human female is pregnant with a baby. That baby is going to be a combination of the mother's and father's DNA, which is a combination of their mothers and fathers, which is a combination of their mothers and fathers, etc., etc., etc. And that's why every now and then you wind up with a redhead. People say, where the heck did he get that red hair? Sometimes genetics can be unpredictable. Well, avocados are like people in that respect. And many people don't know this, but we've got lots of different varieties of avocado. Like this one here in my hand is called a Catalina avocado. And you notice that was kind of pear-shaped and dull. Contrast that with this little bunch of fruit right here. These are called Choquette variety. Right here on this tree is a variety called Monroe. I don't pick these until Halloween. Right next to it here is a variety called Simmons. We start picking these the last week of June. Each of these varieties of avocado have different attributes. Some of them handle cold better than others. As you saw, they have different colors, they have different shapes. The flesh inside of them tastes different. So if I just take an avocado seed and plant it in a pot, not only will it take 10 years before it gives me my first fruit, I don't know what that fruit's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to taste like. I don't know if I'm going to harvest it in the springtime, in the summer, in the fall. But if I take a cutting or a scion from this choquette tree and fuse it into my seedling, my tree turns into a choquette. Similarly, if I take a cut from my Catalina down there, I'm going to wind up with Catalina avocados. And if I took a cutting from this Hall tree, in about 3 years, I will be producing Hall avocados identical to the one I'm holding here in my hand. Currently in this grove, about 90% of my trees are late season varieties. So every time I plant a new tree, I want to put in an early variety. So remember that Simmons I showed you a minute ago? Here's the Simmons tree. And I'm going to take a cutting from this Simmons tree and show you how we graft it onto a seedling. Here we go. I'm going to take this teeny tiny little cutting from that Simmons tree right there behind me and insert it into a seedling that I grew from seed here in the shade house. So when we're done with this project, we will have created a grafted Scion. Come on, we'll go back to the shade house and get this job done. First, we need to prepare the Scion by removing all the leaves. I'll do that now. And I'm guessing in the game Elden Ring, this boss called the Grafted Scion has some sort of lore, some sort of backstory. I can only assume that the different bodies that he's grafted from all have certain attributes that get blended into one. So maybe you take a speed from some type of creature, and strength from another, and intelligence from another, and you graft those three creatures onto this one, so you wind up with a fast, strong, smart boss, something like that. The main point is, what's grafted together in that villain is because he's got attributes that make him a good villain. Well, this Scion right here in my hand has attributes that make it a good avocado tree. Let me set this aside and let's pick out a seedling to graft this guy onto. Now I try to have seedlings growing at all times. Whenever I'm done eating an avocado, I put some seeds in, and when we're really in our avocado season, I just go out in the grove and pick the seeds up that have fallen down and plant those. Because we try to match the thickness of our cutting or our Scion to the seedling we're going to put it on. So this one matches right about here. So I'm going to actually cut off the rest of this seedling and discard it. I no longer care. I no longer want this seedling to grow up and out. I want the root system to grow down and out from the seed. But from the time I fuse this Scion with this seedling, I'm going to discourage any growth from below the junction point, and it will grow into a Simmons tree. On its own, this would have grown into a tree. We have no idea. We might get red avocados, yellow avocados, early season, late season. We might get no avocados at all. They might be delicious. They might taste disgusting. It might come out every year. It might come out one in every 3 years. Who knows? But when I fuse this Simmons Scion into it, I'm going to grow a Simmons tree. And it's going to have all the attributes of a Simmons tree. It'll be pear-shaped. It'll be smooth and bright green. It'll have a nice, creamy, cashew nut flavored flesh inside. It will be ripe the 3rd week of June. So here we have the seedling, and here we have the Scion. And I'm going to fuse these two together and create a junction, just like you see in this tree here. The first step is to cut a slit in the seedling. Next, we make a wedge in our cutting. And while from a scientific perspective, what I'm about to say might be an oversimplification, but I've essentially created a wound in this tree and a wound in this cutting. And by inserting the cutting into the tree, I'm going to force the two wounds to heal together. It's actually the lining just on the inside of the bark that fuses together. So I want to make sure I have at least one side of the bark of the seedling lined up flush with the bark of the cutting. Then I wrap it with tape like I showed you earlier. And then in order to tie it off, we just use a little trick here where we twist the grafting tape like this to strengthen it and give it a couple nice tight winds to keep those two parts in contact. And then we just tie it off. And there we have a freshly grafted Scion. Now in a couple of weeks, as this heals, we'll start to see some new growth push out the top of the graft and some new leaves, and we'll know that our graft succeeded. Eventually, the tree will continue to grow like this 3-year-old specimen, and you'll still see evidence of the graft, but see how it's starting to heal. Now I'll grow that in a 1-gallon pot, and then I'll put it in a 3-gallon pot, and then I'll eventually put it in a bigger pot until it gets to be about just below my chest, and that's when I come out and plant the trees in the grove. And this happens to be a grafted Simmons variety avocado tree right here behind me. Here it is planted in the ground, and we plant these so that the graft is just above the hole. We don't want the graft underground. Now, it's hard to see because this one's been healing, but if you look real close, and I'm going to exaggerate it with my finger, but you'll see a bulge right here. That's where the graft took place on this tree. Now, a lot of people give me comments and they say, oh, my grandmother planted a tree from seed. She never grafted it 30 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And we get these beautiful, whatever variety, fruit off of it. And I always ask them, I say, go out in the yard and take a picture of the tree, right? So if you move into a house and you want to know whether your tree was grafted or not, you see this here where that's kind of gnarly and at an angle and then it branches off? That's indicative of a grafted tree. A tree that was grown from seed just shoots straight up out of the ground like a telephone pole. And so a lot of people who tell me their tree was grown from seed, they actually just assume it was grown from seed. Because when you see a tree, you just assume it was grown from seed, and they never really question whether the tree was grafted or not. But when they send me a picture, I can usually zero in and show them exactly where the graft took place. This tree behind me right here is a tropical fruit called a mamey. It was grafted. This little tree coming into view right behind me right here is called a sapodilla. It was grafted. This mango here, this big mango tree, if you look down at the bottom, you can see the graft. See right at the end of my finger, you see the bulge where that was grafted. If you're one of those Elden Ring players who stumbled into the Sleepy Lizard channel by accident, welcome. I think you guys are awesome. You're really positive. I love the feedback you give me in the comments. And I hope you found this real-life example of a grafted Scion educational, entertaining, and enlightening. And if walking through the grove made you hungry for avocados, or maybe you want to get your hands on some of this Sleepy Lizard merch, go to guacfarm.com. GUACFARM.com. As the season progresses, we'll be selling every single one of those varieties I just showed you. Might be fun to try something new. And you gamers aren't the only ones who have to grind. We farmers got to grind too. We got to plant our seeds, we got to grow our seedlings, we got to harvest our scions and graft them. While I get back to that, you go to guacfarm.com and I will see you on the next video.